Hello, this is RV Vagabond Jerry again, and I'm back in the driver's seat. And today I want to talk about one of the most controversial issues regarding purchasing a motorhome, be it a Class A, Class B, or Class C. And that is, which is better, diesel or gas engines? Which do you want to buy? This could be a very long discussion, but I'm going to try and keep it short. So I'm going to tell you first about the advantages of having a diesel engine. To begin with, some smaller coaches, pretty much all Class C's that have diesel, and a few Class A's will have the diesel engine up front, just like in a truck. But the large majority, probably over 90% of motorhomes, will have the diesel engine in the back of the coach. It's what's called a rear engine coach, or a DP, diesel pusher. And they call it that because with the engine in the back, it's pushing the coach rather than pulling it from the front. And the really nice thing about having the engine in the rear is that when you're up here driving, it's very quiet. You really can barely hear the engine at all. Whereas if you have your engine up front, which all gas coaches do, then it's going to be very noisy in driving. You're going to be constantly hearing that engine struggling and working hard. So it doesn't make for such as nice of a driving experience. Another thing is that if you have the engine in the rear, then your electric generator is going to be up front. If you have your engine up front, the electric generator is going to be in the rear. And why that's important is because often, maybe not often, but sometimes you will be running the generator while you're sleeping at night to keep the air conditioner going. So if you're, and the bedrooms are always way in the back of the coach. So if you're sleeping back there and your generator is 10 feet away, you're going to hear the noise from that generator, and that might disturb your sleeping. But if your generator is up front, you're way in the back sleeping, you're not going to be able to hear it hardly at all. So that's good. And another issue is that in almost all Class A's, the entrance door is right up front. It's right there, right across from the driver's seat, like a bus. Whereas with gas coaches, the entry door is always in the middle. And at first, when I was shopping for a coach, I liked the concept of having the entry door in the middle. That just seemed more homey to me than having the door way up front, which is more like driving a bus. However, the reason why they put the door way up front on diesel engines, and by the way, I don't really know why it makes a difference whether it's diesel and gas as far as where the front door is, but it has something to do with the way the diesel frames of the whole coach is designed. I know there are some diesel coaches that have the door in the middle or close to the middle. But like I said, nearly all of them, you're going to have your door way up front like a bus. And there's two advantages to that. Number one is that if you don't have your door up front, then the passenger seat area around the footing, the floor, is kind of going to be wasted space. Not necessarily wasted. You're probably going to find some good use for that space. but it's space that could be taken up by the entryway. However, if you have the entry door in the middle, then it takes up space that can be used for something else. And let me show you the way it is in my coach. So there is my driver's seat, and then there's my television cabinet, and then right here is a lounge chair right next to a very large window, and then there is the kitchen. Now, if I had a mid-entry coach, the only place to put the entry door anywhere near the middle would be right here, where that window is. That's it, because on this side, you've got the sofa, and you've got the dining table, which is my workstation. So, this would be the only place to put an entry door. And that's fine, except that you're losing this space for something else. For a recliner. And this is a very nice recliner that is just like the recliner in a home. So you would simply lose that space there. It would be taken up by the door and the entryway. Now next I want to talk about mileage. Diesel engines get better mileage than gas engines. Now my coach, which is 38-foot long coach, it gets 9 to 10 miles a gallon. A gas coach would probably get 7 or 8 miles a gallon. So over the long term, that little bit of better mileage may make a difference. It depends on how much you drive. The other thing I want to talk about is air brakes. Diesel engines have air brakes. It's a little button you push right here to turn on the air brakes when you need them, and it slows down your coach when you're going downhill or coming up to a full stop, which just simply saves on the brakes, so you don't have to ride the brakes so long. It helps tremendously in slowing down the coach when you're going downhill or when you're coming up to a stop. So having those air brakes is one of the favorite things of anyone who drives a diesel coach. And then another thing is, if you're going to have something heavy mounted onto the trailer hitch, like a motorcycle rack, motorcycle lift, or a lift for a four-wheeler or any kind of recreational 2 to 4 wheel vehicle, anything heavy that you're going to mount on the trailer hitch, especially if you're going to have a lift, which there's a lot of weight to the lift itself, and some of these lifts I have seen these big Harley Davidsons on. And the problem is, a gas coach, the frame in the rear is not built to support a whole lot of weight. In a diesel engine, with the engine in the rear of the frame is built extremely strong, because that's where the engine is, and it provides a lot of support for anything mounted onto the back of the trailer hitch. So if you're planning on mounting anything back there that's going to be very heavy, then you're really going to need a diesel engine coach. So that's a consideration. Now, we'll talk about some of the negatives of a diesel engine. And one is that with a diesel engine, you have to use 2 different types of fuel. There's 2 different fuel tanks. There's your diesel engine fuel tank, and then there's another small fuel tank that is called a DEF tank, which stands for diesel exhaust fluid. So you have to fill up not only your diesel fluid, diesel fuel, but also your DEF fuel. However, that DEF fuel, that gets about 400 to 500 miles a gallon, as opposed to your your engine using up diesel fuel at maybe 9 or 10 miles a gallon. So that's not a big issue. It's just something extra you have to do, and you have to keep an eye on the fuel level of that DEF tank, and then fill it up maybe about once every 5 stops in getting fuel. You may have to also fill up your DEF tank. And then diesel engines cost a lot more in repair and maintenance. And then, of course, there's a lot fewer places that can work on diesel engines. And the big thing is that a diesel engine coach is going to cost at least $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 more than a gas coach. And that's not at all in the cost of the engine. It's in the cost of the frame. Because a diesel engine coach has to have a much different frame than a gas coach does. So the whole cost of everything together, you're probably going to have to expect to spend another $50,000 for diesel versus gas. And in the long run, if you're driving a lot, cost-wise, it may pay for itself or maybe not. And as a general rule, if you're going to be a weekend camper or just using the coach for vacations, it's usually better to have a gas coach, just because of the lower cost and everything involved. But if you're going to be a full-time traveler, where you're going to be putting a heck of a lot of miles on it, then you're definitely going to want to go diesel. If you try and use a gas coach for full-time traveling, where you're putting on 10, 15, 20,000 miles a year, there's a lot of reasons why you're going to want a diesel engine coach for that much driving. So there's all those various factors, and it really depends on what you're going to be using the coach for, how much you're going to be using it. And what it really comes down to, the number one factor is, if you can afford a diesel coach, get a diesel coach. If money is not a problem, you can afford it, then there really is no reason to get a gas coach. Not much. So, and you ask any owner of a diesel coach if he thinks he made the right decision getting diesel, I bet pretty much 100% of those guys are going to say, oh yes, I would never have a gas coach again. So there you go, folks. If you're considering buying a motorhome, think long and hard about whether you want to go with gas or diesel. Good luck, folks. Bye.